talking mainly about the deployable payload section of our rocket. Um, the reason that we are focusing heavily on this is because the deployable payload is very important to the design of the entire rocket. The deployable payload either needs to go up at the tip of our rocket, it could go down at the bottom of our rocket, or we can't have a deployable payload at all. Having it at the bottom of the rocket has a lot of advantages as far as complexity wise, but having it at the top of the rocket could save us some headache with safety issues. And so ultimately, we wanted to decide whether using this top of the rocket was going to be reliable or not. If using the deployable payload at the top of the rocket was going to be irreliable, then we weren't going to be able to use it for our final rocket. So we built a smaller rocket to test lots of things on for our final design. But one of those main things was figuring out how we were going to get a deployable payload out. So the design that we came up with was a cup system. So the top of the rocket has a little coupler in there that fits on the inside of this, and black powder shoots this top part of the rocket and pulls out a parachute with it. And then attached to that parachute is also, from the bottom of it, is this cup. So this cup is what holds that deployable payload. So the deployable payload just sits inside here, and when the black powder shoots that off, your deployable payload and your cup are going to be all coupled together. And so you need a shock cord to pull the cup back. So as this goes out, it reaches its final, pulls the cup back, and the payload is able to keep going out. So the problems with reliability is, first off, we needed to figure out, is this feasible? Is it going to take a ton of black powder to get this out? Or is it not going to take much black powder? Another big question was, is it going to get stuck on the sides? Is it going to have to tweak in there? Is the cup method reliable? And even if this deployable payload fails, is the parachute going to be okay? Because if the parachute doesn't launch out, then we absolutely can't use it, because we have to be able to recover a rocket. So those are the main things that we are trying to test. So it'll look something like that midair. So we're going to go and we're going to test it and figure out how it works.
Here you can see our initial descent with the drogue chute deployed. In just a moment, you'll see the main deploy right there. So overall, our deployment method and recovery was a success. We're very happy with the results. Some things that we learned. We did learn that our recovery method will be successful with deploying the main, even with the payload piston method that we had discussed before. We actually need less black powder with this method, just because it does behave like a piston when the black powder goes off. A couple things that we want to do better for next time. Our descent was a little slow. Our drogue and main were a bit too large, so we're going to need to do better parachute calculations for the future to make sure that our descent rates are on target. We also want to be a little bit more cautious about how we design for assembly at Spaceport. The assembly had a couple of hiccups, went pretty long, so we just want to be cautious of making sure that we're not getting the cords caught in anything as we're assembling, so we can have a reliable launch once we get to Spaceport. A couple other things, we do want to do some remodeling of the avionics bay, just make it easier to assemble and disassemble, easier to access the computers. And we did have a switch brake for one of the recovery methods, so we just want to be cautious to have spares on hand if we need them. And those are the main things that we learned. Primarily, of course, our recovery method will work. and we're very confident in that. And yeah, pretty happy with the results.